So good morning, everyone, and thank you for taking time to attend COSUS and audience with the University Senior Leadership. My name is Obina Okereke, and I'm your Vice President for Education, and I'll be chairing today's question and answer event. I'm joined by members of the senior leadership team at the university, as well as other sabbatical officers from COSU. The format of the event will be as follows. So for the first section, COSU's sabbatical officers will ask questions that were pre-submitted by students. And we thank everyone for putting these questions forward. We will aim to get through as many as possible, but we have prioritized those that have received the most votes from students. We will then open up the floor for questions from the audience that have attended today's event physically. Finally, we will then go to questions that have been submitted by the online audience during the event. Questions can be submitted at any time during the event, but we ask that you submit them as early as possible. For any questions that we do not manage to get to today, we'll put them to the panel after the event, and the responses will be posted on the COSU website. We appreciate that students will be passionate about some of the topics and questions that are put forward today. However, we ask that everyone remains respectful throughout the event. Any questions that are deemed inappropriate will not be put forward to the panel. Thanks again for attending the event, and we hope you enjoy it. I'll now go to the panel to introduce themselves and then the sabbatical officers. Guy.
Thank you, Obi, and good morning, everybody. My name is Professor Guy Daly, and I'm Deputy Vice-Chancellor for Education and Students for Coventry University Group.
Thank you. Morning, everybody. My name is Douglas Howitt. I'm Dean for Undergraduate Studies.
Morning, everyone. My name is Donna Kendall. I'm Pro Vice-Chancellor for the Student Journey.
Morning, everyone. I'm Steve Galliford, and I'm the Dean of Postgraduate Studies.
Morning, I'm Andrew Turner. I'm the Associate Pro Vice-Chancellor for Teaching and Learning.
Kat.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kat. I'm the Student Union President.
Morning, everyone. I'm Intika, and I'm the Student Union Vice President for Welfare and Inclusion.
Good morning. I'm Gabriela, Vice President for Activities.
Morning, everyone. I'm Julia, Internationalization and Culture Officer.
Hey, everyone. I'm Elvis. I'm the Sports and Wellbeing Officer.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amaka, and I'm the Postgraduate Officer for the Student Union.
So we'll move to the pre-submitted questions, and the first question is from Kat.
Okay, so the first pre-submitted question was, what is the university doing to tackle courses where students aren't receiving the promised 10 hours of contact time?
Okay, I'll have a start at that. Before I do, if I can, I'd just like to say thank you for the opportunity for us meeting with you. And I trust that we will do this in a collegial, respectful way. We know that there are times when the university doesn't get everything right, and we endeavour to solve that. We also know that sometimes when things are raised with us, we only, as Obi and I were talking a moment or two ago, we hear some of the story and not all the story, and we need to get a fuller picture of things. So I trust that as far as today's meeting is concerned, we can work through things in that sort of collegial, responsible way. Regarding our 10 hours of face-to-face commitment, I'd say a couple of things. One is that is a general commitment, and there will be occasions for particular courses where that is not the case. I can think of an example where, for example, if one is doing a student project, one might have more independent time, and there might be other reasons. Having said that, where it is the case that the 10-hour commitment is not being met when it should be, please let us know, and we will investigate that accordingly to ensure that where we have indeed made that commitment, we fulfill it.
What services does the university offer to support the mental health of students outside the UK?
I'm going to hand to Donna for that one, if I may.
Thank you. Thanks for the question. Really important question, because we have lots of students on placements overseas, etc. So we're working with our health and wellbeing services to make sure that we are working in partnership with our overseas partners to ensure that we are able to signpost students who have issues or encounter issues when they're overseas to local services overseas. I mean, I think that you can probably appreciate that whilst we can talk to the students in a counselling fashion, we can't, it's nothing like offering face-to-face. And it's also nothing like if a student needs local services, you need to be able to understand what those local services are and signpost to those local services. So working in partnership with the people who we're placing is really important for us. We're increasingly doing that. I think we're getting better at it. I don't think we're perfect at it yet, but we're certainly getting better at it. Thank you.
Okay, so question from me is, why do timetables keep changing after the semester has begun?
If I start on that, but I think Andrew is very close to that as well. Timetabling is an extremely complicated part of our organisation, our business, how we arrange things. There are a number of stages in it. We confirm with faculties and rest of the Coventry University group what the timetable should look like during the preceding academic year. We then have to do a lot of student fitting, which is determined in part by how many students are progressing and taking particular modules, how many students who are enrolling and joining us for the first time are taking particular modules. And then we have complications around reassessment, where we add individuals and take away. We have to look at clashes as well in terms of that, and room usage. But I think taking Donna's comment in terms of the previous question and answer, we accept we could do it better, we could be slicker at it. We continue to review our curriculum, and part of that will be to try to simplify things so that we can almost blueprint what a timetable should look like for the following year for a student who is joining or continuing, so that they get a clearer picture of that in advance, as it were. But I'll hand to Andrew.
Thanks. I think Guy's covered most of the points, but we are seeing more churn this year with timetables than we previously had. And I think of that, a lot of that has come down to the unpredictability of teaching and learning during the pandemic, and what was expected, the number of students arriving in September, the number of students electing to go online or have face-to-face, the number of international students arriving. So there has been more churn than usual. Clearing was very different this year with the numbers of students coming to us. So we're seeing that. We've also had a number of reasons why we have timetable changes. Some of it's due to when we have, say, academic staff leaving or academic staff sickness as well, which also results in that churn. We're looking at putting some things in place for timetable checking by curriculum leads for the January intake and for the timetables next semester, to try and cut down the amount of changes that are taken once the semester started. So there are things we're doing at the moment to try and cut down the churn for semester 2.
Thank you.
Why doesn't the university have a laptop purchase scheme?
Again, maybe if I start on that, but colleagues will come in, I'm sure. Up until now, our approach has been to supply appropriate IT where it's very necessary as part of the Flying Start, but where students do need a laptop and haven't got access to it, which we saw particularly during the lockdown periods of COVID, we've set up loan schemes. So there's banks of laptops that one can loan out of the hub, from the library, etc. And also we provided extra funding to QSU during last academic year during COVID, so that QSU itself could set up a loan scheme. If there is a greater demand for a purchase scheme that the university or QSU could instigate, that was better than what you can get commercially, then it's something we could consider. But often, if you want to purchase some IT equipment, you're not going to get a better deal that we can organise, even with our bulk buying stuff, than you could actually do on the open market.
Okay, fantastic, thank you. Question from me. Delayed enrolments meant some students couldn't access their course or student finances. what extra provisions are there in place for those students?
I'll probably hand Andrew. Can I hand to you again in terms of what we put in place?
Okay, so enrolments and delayed enrolments is an incredibly complex area and actually comes down very much to individual circumstances as to why students are delayed in enrolments. It's different for returning students, and there's been a number of reasons why we've had returning students delayed through that process. Some of it's about we've had a large number of students who have deferred or are resitting assessments, and that has led to delays in them, you know, confirming they're progressing to the next year, which results in then delays and knock-on then in finance as well. What we're doing at the moment, Donna and I co-chair a meeting that's called the Control Room. We've met every day, I think, since August to monitor the flow of students in enrolment. I don't think we're perfect with enrolment at the moment. We're doing a lot to improve the process. We're introducing new systems, and we'll start to roll out the new systems from January. What we do on a daily basis is now monitor the flow of students through that journey. It's quite a complicated journey, very much dependent on individual circumstances, as I said. We're better this year, comparing to this year to last year, it's been better. One of the reasons it's been better is we introduced an extraordinary resit period in July, which meant that resitting and deferred students got their results in August, well before the start of the semester, which allowed them to confirm they were coming, make the plans to return, and then student finance follows that, and the student finance is released on time. It's very difficult in terms of student finance. Until you got somebody confirmed, you can't confirm to Student Finance England that the student's coming back. In terms of those that are delayed, there are problems with that, obviously. There are hardship funds that can support students that, you know, are in difficulty. But as I say, the main thing is now we're looking at that daily flow of students and making sure we unlock where we've got groups of students that aren't able to re-enroll. The other thing we have done this year for returning students is to release, and who haven't enrolled but are going to come back, is make sure they've had access to their learning materials and Aula, so that we've done some behind the scenes work to make sure those students are accessing Aula, can access Aula and access this year's modules, which hasn't been the case previously. You have to wait till you enroll to see those. We're going to try and do that earlier in future as well, so the returning students get access to the next semester's modules earlier in the process as well, so they're less disadvantaged in terms of delays to learning. So it's a complicated picture. We can take individual cases outside this meeting and talk through those, but it is a complicated picture as well. Donna, I don't know if there's anything you want to say.
It's really intense. It's really intense work, and it's really important for our students. Of course, it is. It's really close to their heart, and it's a stressful time for them. So we're really committed to doing absolutely the best that we can, and we have improved it, and we will continue to improve it. It is complex, as Andrew has alluded to. We are also putting in resource. We've put in about 50 or more than 50 posts to support the enrolment process and to support the student journey. And we're also looking at our inboxes, because at the moment students can email finance, or they can email registry, or they can email international office, or they can email the student engagement centre, and often students don't really know where to go for what, or blitz every inbox. Of course you would, why wouldn't you? So we're looking at that as a process as well, to make sure that we're funneling the traffic to the best place possible, and also looking at looking to improve our response times by putting in that extra resource. Thank you.
Thank you.
What is the university doing to improve response times from finance, registry, and the engagement team?
Well, funnily enough, I've got the mic. That's okay, Professor Daly, if I carry on? Okay. So I think I covered some of it in the question before, so forgive me for doing that. Can I expand on that? Previously, we had inboxes for finance, for registry, for international office, etc. And now we're introducing a new CRM, customer relation management system called Salesforce, where we'll be able to track exactly the inflow and also the responses and the response times. So we'll be able to direct queries accordingly and better than we do at the moment for the student experience.
Thank you.
Okay. As you know, sport plays a big part for our students, especially with their mental well-being and physical well-being. And with currently, there is a lack of provision for sports facilities when compared to other universities. And with the reduced access to Priory Sports Hall this year, some clubs are unable to operate. What is being done to increase the sports facilities at university?
Well, I'll have a start at that, if I may, for a couple of reasons. One is, as my colleagues know, given the opportunity, all that I'd ever do is talk about sport, probably particularly with Steve Galliford, but maybe Douglas as well, because it is, I think, physical activity, which is sport is a part of, is just so important in terms of our well-being. The university has recognised that. We are continuing to develop our sports strategy. So a colleague of ours, Janet Hanna, is the lead on that at the moment and has been looking at what other universities provide and how they provide them to make a case to the Vice-Chancellor and the governors for further investment in that area. And hopefully we will see some of that coming about shortly. I think also, though, if we look at Coventry to start with, there is provision as well as the universities, and we want to be complementary to that rather than necessarily to compete with it. And some students would prefer to use other gyms, etc., rather than our own, because they've used that sort of gym where they were before they came to us, as an example. So I think there's complementarity that we want. We've also got fantastic facilities across our university group. So fantastic facilities in Scarborough, for example, which only the students in Scarborough can really exploit at the moment. So we're looking at our curriculum and how, not just for sports science or sports management, that we may have periods where those students go there, but also other students go there so that they can work on their course material, but also benefit from those facilities. If you then look at London, London's a very different situation where we have very much more a commuting in population and again using other facilities, as it were, and we've got a fairly small operation there. So it is a bit complicated, but we are continuing to look to expand our provision appropriately because we do recognise the relationship between physical activity and sports and more general well-being. I think the other thing to just say, and then I might hand to Donna, who oversees the colleagues who provide services in the sports centre. We're aware of the issue in terms of Priory Hall. I think much of that has been resolved, but there is still a 2-week period where it is currently programmed to be out of action for graduation ceremonies. We're looking to see whether or not we can work something out there, and I know it's something that Kat has raised with me and other colleagues. Donna.
Thanks, Guy. Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Because here at Coventry, we're quite short on space. And Andrew and I were talking this morning about new buildings coming on stream. So we've got the Faculty of Arts and Humanities and more space coming on stream there. We've got a civic centre, more space coming on stream there. So hopefully that will ease some of the current pressure that we face. And there is no doubt that we do face pressure. So I think at the start of the academic year, we were using, for example, Priory Sports Hall for a 2-week period for issuing ID cards. We cut that down, so there's less of an impact, but no doubt there was still an impact. And going forwards, we're looking at whether we can do that type of activity somewhere else. So, for example, in January, we're looking at the refectory for doing that activity rather than Priory Sports Hall. Another issue is, do we use that space for teaching? I think there's one day in the whole semester that was scheduled to use that space for teaching, and we are absolutely committed to try and move our teaching elsewhere, because it's not a great space for teaching in any case. And the other area that we were looking at was exams, because we had that space booked out for a 3-week period or something like a 2-week period for exams. We've changed that now, so that space has become available. So it's not going to be used for exams, which means that in actual fact, I say only, but nonetheless it's still too much, we have a 2-week period where we're using that space for graduation. You know, there are thousands of us, thousands of you, thousands of our students graduating, so we need to make sure that we're thinking about them too and giving them the best experience that we possibly can. We've looked at other spaces that we can use, because we use that area for issuing gowns, and I'm sure that you can appreciate that we need to issue gowns quite close to the cathedral. People run in lastminute.com, get their gown and run over to the cathedral. So, yeah, so it's tricky, but we are committed to limiting the use of that space in order that sports and societies can use it more.
Could I just add one thing? Elvis, particularly your question, didn't specifically mention esports. And Guy said about our sports strategy, which is primarily looking at physical spaces. And I understand that as really important, but e-sport is also part of that strategy. And we're really, really keen that we invest and develop that area, because that's obviously a fully fledged, flourishing, legitimate part of well-being, particularly for students. So just wanted to make that point. It often gets forgotten, particularly amongst people of our age, or certainly my age. And it's obviously, that I think is important to make that point. And that obviously is less space reliant as well, so that would be good. So that's on the agenda too.
Do you have a follow-up?
I had a little follow-up. So, Guy, you mentioned the sports strategy. Would it be publicized for students to see as well, or is there any timetable when it could be?
It's not a public document yet. A first iteration of it has been presented to the group leadership team, and some further work is and it will go back. It will be eventually something that certainly will go to governors, where QSU has representation on the governing council, and then I think after that it would be something that we would publicise.
Thank you.
Okay, so back to me. Can students switch between teaching modes weekly? So let's say have face-to-face this week and study online next week.
I'll start on this, but I think perhaps Andrew afterwards, until or unless other colleagues want to come in. What we found over the last 12, 18 months, what was really reinforced was students saying that they wanted to be with each other. They wanted face-to-face opportunities, they wanted to develop communities, they wanted to develop relationships. That in part, not the only reason, but that in part informed our position of saying that we would make a commitment to 10 hours of face-to-face. We do believe that most students, if they can, learn better through on-campus, formal and informal learning and other opportunities. That's part and parcel of being a student, whether it be an undergraduate or a postgraduate. Part of the benefit of that is because you are meeting other students, formally and informally. And back almost to the previous question about the benefits of sport and everything, occasionally, or all the time, if you're going to benefit from that, you need someone nudging you to do it. If you just leave it up to yourself, then you'll say, I won't go to the gym today. I'll stay in bed and go online for the lecture, comfortably in my duvet and all that sort of thing. that doesn't often benefit the learner, but also the learning experience is one whereby you have a responsibility as well as a right. You have a responsibility to contribute to your peers' learning, as it were. Otherwise, you might as well just do it online on an island by yourself. So for the most part, we would disencourage people to be switching back and forward. It is possible, and we do it on occasions, and there will be occasions when a student may have COVID in their family and they can't come in and all that sort of stuff. But generally speaking, we feel that students should commit to a particular mode, as it were, of learning. So I think that's probably what I would say. There are also implications for students who have said that they are studying an on-campus course. If you're a UK student and you don't fulfil that, there are potential consequences in terms of your maintenance loan. And for international students, there is an expectation in terms of Tier 4 license and all that sort of stuff. I don't know whether I've left anything for Andrew to add to that.
So I think in response to the pandemic, we did introduce at the start of this year the ability to start online for our international students, and we published a list of courses where it was possible to start and continue online. And we also asked the question of home students at enrolment: did you want to study online and where available online, or come to campus? One of the things we've had to do, we have a suite of 23 courses where there is now a formal option to study fully online, and you elect to study fully online, and we've done that. I think the direction of travel is to, longer term, is to offer more flexible study. But the truth of it is, to swap on a weekly basis requires quite complex systems to record that and dynamically link to timetabling. And at the moment, we're just not there with that. That's, to be able to swap on a weekly basis. As Guy said, there is a real problem for home students who are in receipt of a maintenance loan. And if you agree a study pattern which is more or less fully online, then we have a legal duty to inform Student Finance England of those students that study on a course and are not coming to campus who are fully online. So there are implications there for maintenance loans. At the moment, it's the policy, the government policy, the OFS policy on online study, blended approaches, isn't particularly well developed. It's quite contradictory in places. I think that will tighten up with time, and I think there'll be a move to more flexible pedagogies and teaching and learning nationally. But I think for us, we've got a desire longer term, but we're just not there with our systems to enable that swapping on a weekly basis.
Can I just ask something? So you said that in extreme cases it would be possible for students to switch. So what is the way for that to happen? What do students need to do to switch on?
I think it's the case. I'll have to check. But what we did last year was that you need to have a conversation with the course director. I think that's still the case.
So we have a published route for students wanting to move from online to blended, and that's the initial contact is through the Student Engagement Centre, who manage that process. We've got a process for international students who want to move from blended to online, and that again is through the Student Engagement Centre, and then they liaise with the Tier 4 and the compliance teams on what that means in terms of sponsorship. And we're just at the moment got a process which is just being scrutinised by the legal team for home students who want to move from a blended approach to online, because we need to make sure we're correct in what the implications are for maintenance loans. So we need to get that right. So we should be publishing that in the next week or so for students who want to move from on campus to fully online, or to continue for the rest of the year online as well.
So we'll now open up. We'll open up questions. We'll open up to questions from the floor. So if you have a question, raise your hand, and one of the team will bring a microphone to you. If you introduce yourself, you can introduce yourself, then ask your question. And after you've asked your question, you will be given an information slip to write your name and course. Please make sure you fill this and pass to a member of the team. So any questions from the floor? from this audience.
Hello everyone, my name is Adriana, I'm a criminology student. I have a question. It was mentioned before the fact that there was a delay in the enrollment and all that stuff. There were many reasons for that, but I just wanted to ask, was the UKBA team, so in the case of criminology, we were some students returning, some of us being international students, and we had to go through another documents check process that implicated the UKBA team checking on us. And when I asked my tutors about that, they don't know who this team was. So I'm asking you if you know and you could provide some clarification about it. That would be great.
Was this specifically for a returning international students?
Yeah, so we had to be transferred because there was a change in the criminology course, in the structure, and in order for that transfer to be done, there was a need of another documents check apart from the one that was done by
Okay. So that will be specific because it's about named courses with UKVI and ensuring that the checks have been done aligned to that particular course and the visa requirements. We also had a lot of students, international students last year, who didn't come to campus because of the pandemic. And therefore the usual checks that were carried out, that would be carried out at enrolment, weren't, because there was no travel to the UK. The UKVI is really firm on the checks that the university needs to do, and that you have to do document checks when you come to the university before you can enrol. So there's a lot of legislation and a lot of procedures that we have to follow to keep our license to sponsor students to study in the university. If it was a transfer, it would have been because of the specifics of transferring a course.
All right, thank you. I was just wondering who the team was because, as I said, not even my tutors knew exactly, so it was a bit blurry.
Okay, we have a specific registry team that look at the university's compliance with the rules and regulations that come from the UK visa people. So we have a team that look after that.
Could I just come in for a second? Thank you. Also, if you're not sure about which team to go to the Student Engagement Centre or go to the information points, always, because they will be able to signpost you. Or they should be able to. Now you're reaching for the mic and saying you did that and they couldn't signpost you.
Well, it was a bit more complicated than that because they did say that the documents were all right and I was allowed to study, but then I went to registry and they said, so registry initially said that my documents were not checked by the engagement team, by the international team. Then I went to them, they said, yeah, we did a check, went back to registry, and the registry said, there is the UKBA team that also needs to check, so there is another check. That's why it was even more confusing. Okay.
There was another question from the audience. Sam.
So, hello. I'm Sam Joko. I'm a final year sport management student. My question is in relation to Sodexo. I don't know if you have, I don't know how much influence you have on them, but I've got a question, and it's around the availabilities of microwaves for students to encourage students to bring food on campus and warm and eat. I think that it's been a bit unfair on students, especially in this semester, following the fact that they have to come in on campus and be subjected almost to the options that Sodexo has in the canteen. I understand that businesses are the first primary objective of a business is to make money, but I think it's unfair that students can't have that option of coming on campus with their food and warming and eating. So I don't know how much influence you have on that, or what is the reason why the microwaves were withdrawn from the canteens.
Sam, I think that's a really good question, which I'll try and pick up. The Sodexo contract is a huge contract to the university, and we changed supplier catering supplier about 3 or 4 years ago, I think. I don't think it's out of place of me to say that we are working very hard with Sodexo to try and improve standards. And I think that's a concern that we all share. So you just have to kind of bear with us on that one and take our word for the fact that it is something that is in our minds and we are working with them. The issue about microwaves is a really interesting one, and it's something I agree with you entirely. But it is something of a battle about how we get round the facilities you have to provide, certain liabilities. But I know I've collected a bit of information from other universities where that sort of facility is provided. So again, if you could just bear with us, leave it with us. It's something I do agree with you, and I'm quite happy to try and make the commitment that I at least raise those issues with the people that influence those sorts of things and see where we can go with that. Particularly thinking of that for postgraduate students, where other which is who I'm responsible for, where other universities do add those sorts of facilities for students. And I've seen that elsewhere. Donna mentioned the new Civic Centre development, which will have a postgraduate student centre in it. And that's not going to arrive in time for you guys. But the facilities in there, which I've had some influence on, would include those sorts of facilities, because I think it's the sort of thing that you deserve. So it's a bit of a slow burn, I'm afraid, but we are looking at it, or I will look at it for you.
Hi, Steve. Sorry, just a quick follow-up. So my question is, on the Sodexo side, are we also looking at the prices of the food that Sodexo sells to students? Because it's incredibly expensive.
Yeah, and it's an ongoing issue for us, and we are aware of that.
And on the microwaves, could we try and think about doing it maybe by next semester, that we still have a few months to go?
I'm not going to guarantee anything, but it's not that simple. So, but I will raise it with the people that it needs to be raised with. Okay.
Thank you.
And I think the contract is up for review pretty soon anyway, as it were. But again, Steve's point in terms of current final year undergrads, whether or not things will be sorted in that time frame, can't commit.
Do you have a follow-up?
My follow-up was pretty much just like Kat's. It was about prices. Does Sodexo decide the prices, or you negotiate the prices? Because I had a couple of students just approaching to me asking where they can get affordable food, because they don't want to pay like £8 for a burger at university's canteen.
I don't know. I'm not close enough to it. I imagine that we negotiate the contract with them as a whole. They set their prices within that, is what I imagine happens.
The next question from the audience.
And maybe whilst the microphone's going round, what we're also looking to do is whether or not we can have a number of independent providers, social enterprises, etc. We've talked with QSU management about an outlet in Starley Gardens and that sort of thing, so that we can have a variety of different companies, as it were.
Okay, I'm Chris by name. This question is a quick one, goes to the Dean Postgraduate Studies. Please, I want to ask, what is the university doing about the postgraduate studies in terms of practicals? Because this time around, there is not much practical that's going in the postgraduate studies, particularly in the School of Engineering. Please, what's the university doing about that? Thank you.
So that's a really specific question. You said engineering. I probably can't answer that right now, but I think if we can get a communication going about that. So I'll hang around and make sure we exchange emails, because I need the detail on that, because that sounds to me like a really specific course-based question. So rather than answer it now, I'm very happy to speak to you after this. We'll exchange emails, and if you can give me the details, I'll look into it for you. Is that okay? Okay.
Any other question from the audience? One more question.
Hi, my name is Natalia. I'm the final year student of International Business Management. And I just wanted to quickly inquire about the way academic year, especially here on campus, is scheduled. Because most of the British universities offer free term academic year. And because of the way the academic year is scheduled here, most of the students don't get the opportunity to attend and participate in spring internships. And that reflects their chances of getting summer internships and getting to that first professional experience. Because as of now, the spring internships offered by the biggest organizations are when the April exams are.
Depending on the program, we do allow for short placements, week, 2 weeks, placements in a module, placements in a semester. In designing the new academic year, we also wanted to have space enough whereby students can use that third semester whenever it is in their particular student journey to allow for that as well. We'd have to look at I think your point about the synchronization of when particular opportunities arise, if they're clashing with our assessment period. I think it's something that we can look at. But we've changed our academic year in some ways to provide for those sorts of opportunities where previously we'd sort of stretched out stuff which then didn't allow for such opportunities.
Any other question?
My name is Sayana Nyiraneza, and my question is regarding, as a student, my question is regarding our data. Is our assignment, our emails, our communication safe from the potential cyber attack or anyone who want to hack our information regarding our studies and bringing fake information or canceling our studies? We need to know if we are protected.
So we take cybersecurity really, really seriously. A number of universities have been subject to attack, and their systems have gone down for a period of time, and data has been lost and all that sort of stuff. So far, that's not happened to us, and we take it very seriously. We're continually updating our systems. It's in part why we have some of the bureaucratic stuff that we have, which is frustrating on the one hand, but we feel necessary at the moment in terms of we communicate with you through your student email rather than other emails. We communicate with you rather than for some students when a parent might email in. Often sort of Donna and I, if it's welfare stuff, we want to respond back to the parent straight away, but we have to protect your confidentiality and security. So I think you can never say never. We're continually vigilant about this. We take the protection of your privacy, including your data, extremely seriously.
So we're moving to the online questions. So the first question from the online audience. Students can currently choose to study completely online. Will this continue to be possible for the new semester starting in January?
It does. It depends on a number of things. It certainly depends, first of all, as Andrew was saying, on the course. For some courses that might be possible and or might be necessary. For others, it's not because of the issue of practical and labs and things like that. So it will be a course-by-course basis and also probably an individual student basis. But it's something, and also who knows what's going to happen in terms of COVID and pandemic and whether or not the UK goes into another lockdown period, which some people are predicting. It will be dependent upon all of that environment, really. Some courses it's appropriate and possible. For others, we've done it as a pragmatic response to circumstances, for example, of international students not being able to come to the UK. For others, they are ones that we have designed and offered as a fully online alternative.
So the next question.
Sorry, Andrew.
Yeah, just to add, so for international students, we will be publishing the list of courses where students can start online. and then come to university. There is a date published by the government for international students who want to be sponsored to come to the UK, have to be in the UK by. So we're working at the moment to determine for us what that date will be. It's actually sometime in April, but we will be publishing when a student needs to be back on campus if they want sponsorship and to be studying in the UK. So that's not in our gift. That's a government decision.
The next question. So in the university's Microsoft accounts, so Outlook and Teams, there's no option for displaying multiple first names or middle names, which is commonplace in other cultures. With a diverse and multicultural student population, why does the university not have a system in place for students to choose their preferred names? And further, how can students be sure their correct name will be on their degrees if it is not shown correctly on their university accounts?
That's pretty complicated, pretty detailed. I'll have a go at some of it. I would imagine that what one chooses to be called as far as one's email and Outlook account is flexible. I had the benefit of a Catholic upbringing, so my name is Guy Bernard Joseph Francis Xavier Daly. I've chosen not to use that for my email address. So I think there should be some flexibility there. But one does have to be careful in terms of having the correct name in terms of things like degree certificates. So what one might be called socially and publicly, we need to ensure that we're using the right one for the right thing, as it were. But we can take that away and have a look at it. Because if you've probably noticed, and it really frustrates me, your actual email address for you as students, I think is sort of an alias, as it were. It certainly is for us. So my email address is hsx885@coventry.ac.uk, and then they create an alias for that to Guy Daly at, etc., or G Daly at. Don't know whether anybody wants to come in with any further on that one.
Can I get a follow-up for that, just very quickly? So as part of the LGBTQ plus community, I know some students would like probably not in their degree certificates because if they haven't done the transition or changed their name legally, it might not be good for them. But on their university contacts and everything, would it be possible for them to change their name and pronouns for the way on how the university communicates with them?
I would think so. I mean, we'd probably have to take it away and talk to people about that.
Okay.
But certainly if someone is choosing to be described differently, they're transitioning or something like that, then we would want to ensure that flexibility.
There is a process to ensure it comes through and represented in the learning systems. So we have got that in place, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Last year, due to COVID-19, students were automatically granted 2-week extensions and deferrals. Is this something that can be implemented as a routine for students with long-term health conditions and disabilities who face similar challenges outside of the pandemic?
I think this relates to an issue that might come up otherwise, which is actually we've moved from a 2-week extension period to a 1-week for what we believe is good reason. I'll hand to Andrew for that in a moment or two. Also, it's almost back to the nudging and tough love stuff. Whilst we do wish to be sympathetic, as we endeavoured to be last semester, there are consequences of this whereby we had issues in terms of students progressing and completing in some respects because they were taking extensions and deferrals and all that sort of stuff. So I think we need to be very careful about that. If we have a pandemic, we would look to implement, if we have a further lockdown and all that sort of stuff, then we would again look to implementing a no detriment process. But I think we do need to be balanced in terms of, balance in terms of an individual circumstances, and we would look at that sympathetically, but also a bit of tough love of ensuring that people do submit assignments and therefore in a position whereby they can progress. That in part is why we've change things from the 2 week to the 1 week extension period, I think, Andrew.
Yeah, we took the decision really to go with reducing down from a 10 working days to a 5 working days extension. There's always positives and there's always some negatives with that, but one of the reasons for doing that was it extended the period of time that marking processes went on, and for many students it meant that marks were returned too late to be useful to inform work and other assessments in that semester. It's also meant when we've got, say, for first and second year work, which has a 3-week turnaround time, you add on another 2 weeks onto that, and you've got a 5-week marking period before the work comes back, which means it's just released too late. Similarly, if you've got the deferred extensions as well, you add on another 10 working days onto that, and you've got marks coming back far too late in time for re-enrollment. So that we took the decision really to go down to 5 days. We kept the protections in there, so we know people's lives are complex. People need extensions, things come up at the last minute. We kept the 24-hour grace period, so reducing the need to request an extension if you've got last-minute glitches that prevent submission. So we've got the 24-hour grace period. And we think on balance, the benefits far outweigh the negative impacts. Of course, we've still got the ability to request a deferral with evidence if needed as well. Hope that answers the question.
Some returning students experienced delays with the enrollment process, which meant they missed the deadline and were unable to continue their studies this semester. Is there any possibility for the students affected to enroll during the January or May intake rather than waiting until September to re-enroll?
Yes, I think is the answer to that.
Okay, so we're moving to the other set of pre-submitted questions.
So why do international students pay more for their tuition fees than home students? And are international fees regulated in a similar way to home students' fees?
I'm going to hand to Douglas for this one.
Thank you. Universities in the UK are in an unusual situation in that the government limits how much we're allowed to charge home undergraduate students. In all sorts of other businesses and other areas and whatever, businesses can charge what they like. You know, if you're an airline, you can charge either premium fees or you can be like EasyJet or Ryanair and charge the absolute minimum. And you know, businesses have freedom. As a university, we don't have freedom when it comes to UK undergraduates, the home students. So that's the fee cap. That's the maximum we're allowed to charge, and that brings with it a lot of challenges. Not least the fact that that cap hasn't changed over the last few years. It's been in place for quite a few years now. It's actually a legal thing. It's in law, and costs have risen with inflation. So one of the real challenges that we have is that the fee that we get in for UK students doesn't necessarily cover the cost of delivering the course. And when this is raised, and government policy is essentially that we then have to do other activities to make sure we bring in enough money to make the university run effectively, and that includes bringing in international students. And the UK, the government doesn't regulate the fees that we charge for international students. So that's why there's those differences between what home students pay as opposed to international students. Now, we can all have our different views on whether that's appropriate or not. That's the environment that we're operating within. And I think that what's really, really important to us as a university is that whatever student you are, whatever course you're doing, whether it's undergraduate or postgraduate, that you know exactly what fee you're paying when you start. So it should be absolutely transparent. So there's no sort of hidden surprises. And I think that the approach that we've taken, including the sort of incremental inflationary rises that happen to fees as well, it's all there on the website when students are enrolling on their course.
I have a little follow-up.
Can I add a bit to that as well, though, if I may? So I think there's a number of things. One is that what sometimes people talk about the cost of acquisition, the amount of money that is spent on attracting and processing international students it is more expensive than UK students. In addition, whilst we get most of our fees in terms of UK students, if you like, from government through the loan scheme, as British taxpayers are essentially paying that fee for that fee up front, and then some students, but not necessarily all students, will pay it back. So you could argue that UK students are being subsidised to cover some, if not all, of their costs by the UK taxpayer. We also do get money from the UK government for other things, such as buildings, capital projects. So Douglas and I, when we were in the Faculty of Health and Life Sciences, the Addison Gel building, £60 million. That was paid for in part, not majoritarily, but in part from government grants paid for by UK taxpayers and that sort of thing. So it's an extremely complicated situation, I would say, in terms of the levels of funding. I think the follow-on in some ways was going to be about the extent to which international student fees are likely to be regulated in the future. And that is something that the Office for Students, which regulates higher education, has been talking about, but they're not doing as yet.
So my question would be more about EU students. So obviously the number of students who applied this year dropped a lot. Is there any idea on how we can support and attract EU students to still apply for universities?
I mean, the most direct cause of that is that EU students prior to Brexit were treated in the same way as UK students, all part of the same European community citizens. So if a UK student could access a loan, an EU student could as well. As with the implementation of Brexit, that stopped, and international EU students were then deemed to be international students, and therefore part and parcel of that fee regime. We wouldn't have been allowed to charge some international students a particular fee, i.e. an EU student, maybe charge one level of fee, and other international students a different fee. That would have been deemed to be unfair, etc.
I just wanted to add something about postgraduate students. Actually, this year, our number of EU postgraduate new starters went up slightly. Not by many, but it did increase. But the Vice-Chancellor is very keen that we try to welcome EU students at postgraduate level continually. So he's asked me to look at a number of things that we may be able to do to support that agenda. I can't tell you what they are because I haven't finished thinking about it and he hasn't said yes to them yet. So again, you have to bear with me, but it is a piece of work that I'm doing at the moment to try and support that. But as I say, actually, EU numbers for PGs were increased this year, which I was really delighted about, actually.
I think the other thing to say is that whilst there is a difference between international fees and UK fees, you look at the UK university sector, there is a significant difference between the levels of international fees that some universities charge than others.
Sorry, one more thing. Andrew's just reminded me that we do actually have a campus in Wrocław in Poland. I apologise if there's anybody from Poland here and I said that wrong. We have various iterations, so apologies. So that's another opportunity where we're able to take students from the EU at a reduced fee because operating costs in Poland are a lot lower. It's in its infancy. It's very small at the moment, but we hope that will grow, like some of other satellite campuses have done in this country. So that's, again, a big investment by the university into Europe to maintain that link that we have with the EU. I don't think any of us voted for Brexit, by the way, so, you know.
If I may, as an addition to that, is there or will there ever be an opportunity for both home and international students to see an approximation of kind of where their fees are spent? I think at the minute there's a general kind of anger towards fees and them being more because they don't understand where that money's going. Is there any way for students to access an approximate breakdown of that?
yeah, we've asked our finance director to look into how that can be presented in an easy, accessible way. That is something that you see other universities do, either in their annual reports or on their website, etc. Sort of whereby there are pie charts, as it were, that sort of slice it up. So we're looking at that, yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. So my next question is from an online student, which is basically, what are the steps the university is taking to support and monitor online students? Because the student doesn't believe there is any tutors, check-ins, or system to monitor them or their attendance. So is there anything that you can do about this?
Do you want to come in, Andrew?
So for our students studying fully online, there should be timetabled online sessions on the timetable, and we've asked that each course team makes that available. If it isn't, then we'd be interested to hear the specific details. They should always also get support of a personal tutor, and again, if that isn't happening, then we need to know the specifics of that. In terms of the use of data, obviously learning has changed, and we've got flexible models of learning. We do a lot of online support for all learning at the university. So an important part of our data set now is what's happening online and student engagement with online, engagement with Aula, engagement with our other online platforms like Vigo. And that data feeds through, and we monitor engagement at an individual and course level. And we also use data to inform if we see drops in engagement, follow-up calls from the Student Engagement Centre as well. And that's in development now to better use that data to have follow-up calls for support if we see engagement being low. So we do see that. We look at engagement at a course level as well to see how well courses are engaging with learners as well. So we see that data on a weekly basis and at different levels as well.
Just a quick follow-up. So can we assume that all postgraduate students, including PGTs, should have a personal tutor before they start doing their final thesis?
So obviously, if students are doing project work, they will have a supervisor for the project work, and often that's one and the same in terms of tutors for postgraduate students. There should be for each course, details of the support that's offered, and there should be that support in place. If that support isn't in place, then we need to know.
Okay, so for any student that is watching and is an online student and they don't have support, what do they need to do to get it?
Yeah, absolutely.
No, but I'm saying, what do they need to do? Because not all students can just start contacting us. So is there a system? Should they contact their course director?
The first point of contact for a course is the course director. And so it's important they contact the course director. If they don't get a response there, then it can be cascaded to us and referred on. Well, actually through the faculty, I'd say, to start off with, but also to us if there's not a response there.
Okay, thank you.
So there has been a lot of issues with students receiving CAS letters from the university, and we were wondering what is being done to ensure this process is quicker in the future. And just to add to that, as internationalization officer, I've been facing many situations when students were messaging me or coming in person when they were really struggling because they couldn't proceed with their visa. Tickets for the plane were delayed, so this is like very, very complex process, and they were really, really anxious about that.
I mean, I think this was exacerbated by COVID, the pandemic, and it being more difficult for people to find, produce documentation, which then would trigger other things. We know that enrolment is nowhere near perfect at the moment, and this was a facet of that. And it's something that we are working on as part of the enrolment team and enrolment review.
So the CAS process is quite complex, and as Andrew alluded to earlier on, there are legal ramifications and implications, legal requirements that we need to meet. So we have a team in place who manages that whole cycle. Quite often students, well, we're told by that team that students will think that they've submitted all of the information that they need in order for CAS to be issued. But because the regulations are so stringent, we absolutely have to be 100% sure that the correct documentation has been submitted. And also, to add to that, in the control room, as Andrew alluded to earlier on, we look at turnaround times for CAS, and we do know that this is a focus for us at this present time. So just to cut to the quick on that one, the turnaround times aren't good enough. They need to improve.
Okay. Now that concludes an audience with the Investor Senior Leadership event. I'd like to thank the panel for taking the time to address some of our students' questions, our sabbatical officers, and most importantly, our students who attended today's events. An audience with is the first in a series of Q&A events brought to you by COSU. In November, we will be running a series of in-conversation events where you can put questions to senior leaders within your school. You can submit questions and get your tickets to the event by going to the CUSU website, cusu.org/QA. Here you can also find out more information on the services COSU offers and how you can get involved. Thank you everyone for coming.